What is up, everybody? Huang Zero here, and today we have for you all a special treat in the form of the BT15 tier list. Joining me today is, as per usual, Zero.
Hey, what's up?
And so, first and foremost, I know it's been a hot sec since we posted a little bit of content. I have wanted to wait for the sim to get finalized before we started doing BT15 content, and I'm very happy to announce that progress on the sim has once again resumed. We're working on getting BT15 programmed as soon as possible, and we are hopeful that we're looking into a open beta situation upcoming in the future. If you want to inquire more about that, please feel free to join the Huang Zero Discord server in the Sim Q&A channel, and feel free to ask questions there. But this video is not about the sim. This is more about our thoughts on the BT15 tier list. And I know normally we do the BT15 tier list very early on, generally before any of the events have actually taken place, but due to just being busy and whatnot, we are actually doing a tier list with a little bit of I guess hindsight's not the word to use here, but like we have
data.
Results, right? We have data, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the other reason that it was good to wait is we had a ban list, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually, when we do one of these tier lists, there's a lot of internal testing, but also Japanese result to take in, and this particular format, there's no result to take in, so we wanted to wait a little bit at least to see if some of our testing pan out, because sometimes something will be like really great in testing War Greymon, and it doesn't get any result at all.
Wait, hey, you can't say that because War Greymon made top 4. I'm just
I mean, I'm talking about nets. Somebody forced me to put it in tier 1, and it didn't.
I'd put it in tier 3 eventually, if that makes you feel any better. But anyway, that aside, starting us off, we have what is probably the best deck in the format, in our opinion, is Leviamon, right? So out of the gate, yeah. Leviamon is a deck. It's relatively consistent. You have a lot of cycle in the form of your Garurumon and Doberexes. The deck has an insanely high ceiling, being able to inflict 6 damage in a single turn, as well as clear entire boards. You have the ability to interact on your opponent's turn, basically like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck in the form of cards like Biden Crush or Levia X. Really, this deck kind of just does everything. Like, I don't know if this deck is in particular lacking anything per se, but it's a very strong deck. I think the only thing this deck has kind of a weakness in regards to is decks that have protection, so things that are just able to like shrug off the pop, right? So cards like Fanglong, for example, cards like War Greymon with Alteris plus Gray X underneath, I can be a little bit of a problem. And then what's another one? I feel like not so much new made to an extent. I mean, like kind of new made to an extent, depending on like the build. Red Hybrid's also kind of an annoying one, right? Because when you pop them, they just float back out. And Levia X is Tamer pop first, and then resolve the actual Digimon pop. So yeah. Any thoughts on Levia?
I think the deck is just really good.
It is. It is very good. It is really really good.
If you look at just based on testing and look at result, it probably have the best matchup spread into the meta. Like I can't really think of anything that is super hard loses to off the top of my head.
Yeah,
it has some like unfavorable matchup to be sure, but it has so many tools, right? Yeah, I don't know. Just purple cards have been really good for a while now, and continue to be good.
Yeah, I do agree that even your bad matchups are winnable because you have cards like Cerberus X that just lets you blow your opponent out of the water. Like you swing for 6 and then you drop Rush Guilmon and go for game. And when you have combos like that, it's kind of hard for your counter per se to like actually do anything. So yeah. It's really.
But like in many ways is less oppressive than Anubis, because Anubis doesn't even let you play the game sometime on turn 2. Like Anubis come out turn 2 and just win the game for you, right?
Yeah.
So in many ways, Levia is a lot more quote unquote fair than that, because it requires more time to set up. Like you actually have a requirement of setting up before you do all your nonsense, right? But at the same time, this deck feel you know how we had that discussion where Anubis felt like the most fragile best deck in format that we ever had, because it hard loses some matchup like Red High with Crimson.
Yeah,
Levia felt a lot more stable as a best deck in format.
I would agree. Yeah,
because one thing is that this format feel lower power than the previous 2 format that we have overall. In my opinion, due to the hits, right?
Yeah.
And Lavea is still a very good deck and is not so weak into a bad matchup. Like you can play around Crimson Blaze. You can play around a lot of stuff. You can play around, like Merciful Mo. Well, not like so much play around, but like they can if they can screw you over if they merciful at like the exact perfect moment. But oftentimes you can still recover from getting merciful once, right? As long as you're aware of it. So yeah, it's just I think we spent enough time on it, but yeah, I think it is best second format for a reason.
Yeah. And then following that is the other deck that has performed almost, if not just as well, I think actually just as well, is Numemon.
I think they have basically equal result.
Yeah, so I think the one thing that Numemon has going for it, and we'll talk about the deck itself, is that as far as conversion rates go, I actually think Numemon has a higher play rate than Leviathan. And so while they have just about the same amount of top 16s, if I remember correctly, Numemon likely has a higher play rate, therefore having a higher conversion rate than Leviathan, which I think is very interesting. And unlike Leviathan, which only plays purple, Numemon has a multitude of different bases you can pick from. Because the Numemons themselves are all 3 cost and relatively cheap, you don't actually care that much what kind of base you're playing. The base that has seen the most success is black base, and I would attribute that to the fact that A, you don't have to swing to get any of your draws, and B, you can digivolve over the floodgates into your various Numemons, but the other the other bases have merit. Red base, for example, having the second best draw power off the rip, as well as access to Crimson Blaze. So you have cards like Muchomon as well as the promo Guilmon. And then purple has arguably the fastest draw power out of the 3 bases, but also allows you to discard the platinum very early on, so you can float into that quickly. But albeit at the cost of having to discard a 5 or higher, which sometimes you don't want to discard your Monzais, so that can be a very difficult decision. But Numemon as a deck, it's the like premier rush deck, right? You're playing a bunch of floodgates, you're playing a bunch of level 4s that rush very easily. They all float. You play the Monzais, those float. The platinum, it floats, and you can off of the Numemon X ability, you can float into your platinum, and then that sometimes steals your opponent's turns, and then that's an easy bridge into level 7s. Do you want Ruin mode? Do you want Death X? How about Merciful mode? The world is your oyster. Numemon is probably the most. It has like 24 cards that are mandatory, and then the remaining 26 are whatever you really feel like. We've seen Numemon deck lists that run Cool Boy. We've seen Numemon lists that are now on 2 Armon from Hunters, which is kind of insane technology if you think about it.
Yeah.
But just in general, it's the deck where outside of those 24 cards, you don't know what it's actually packing, so it could really just come up and surprise you. There are people that are playing a Zulongmon, for example, and that's a really great counter to decks like Melga. You have people that are playing things like Promo Dorumon. Promo Dorumon sometimes just nets you a free Numemon, and yeah, it's arguably the fastest deck. It sticks like crazy, and you never know what the remaining 26 cards are going to be.
Yeah, it's very good. But also on the flip side, I think this deck is not being best second format due to its own issue as a deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you said, it's pretty flexible as a deck. But the problem is that flexibility doesn't solve all your issue.
Yeah.
Because you can go either super linear, like down low, full aggro, consistent version, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that version is very consistent, but it lacks ceiling.
Yeah.
It is very linear. So when you run into some matchup, like Secon, you may run into issue. And then if you try to play more flexibility to give yourself more access to, different type of plays, then you run into the issue of like, oh, my deck is now less consistent. Because in testing, we've had a lot of test game where you try to make the deck for having a higher ceiling, but then you start bricking a lot more often because you get less draw and less cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the issue that deck has that Lavia doesn't suffer from. So that's the reason why I put Lavia as best deck in format and not this deck.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Into decks where like your level 6s can be pretty big, Numemon can sometimes struggle with that because primarily your removal is like using Warrior to digivolve into like Monzai X to DP minus, or like Monzai into Monzai X. And then if it's not those 3, then you're relying on some kind of tech in order to get rid of like tall top end. And sometimes you just kind of run out of gas, right? Like sometimes because you're hard slamming so many Numemons, and so if you don't draw like cards like Garymon, or you don't draw into your Nume X's, then you will quickly run out of gas because you're not cycling like a normal deck does.
Yeah, you also have some like really rough matchup.
Yeah.
Like Deva can be really rough for you if they clear your board with Feng Long. You can't float into anything. If you get your board clear by Crimson versus any red deck, you can't float into anything. It's just like any deck that can do multi pop onto your stuff will slow you down significantly. You are often sometimes forced to play into ace plays, and that can be like really bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the nature of the deck is very good, but just the nature of the deck being very aggro to win the game just forces you to make some very inoptimal play sometimes.
Okay, next we do have Belphimon. Belphimon is a deck that it did take a hit to the ban list, losing Gabu X plus Garu X, which the deck was using as an engine for quite some time. Belphimon, I mean, it has a couple of niches going for it, right? Like having attack negate, being immune to your opponent's effects. So like now you're immune to like a lot of Leviamon shenanigans. Being able to deny Leviamon's big swing is also pretty nice, right? I think the downside is decks like Numemon, where like you go Belphimon Rage mode and you attempt to pop their entire board and then they float their entire board. That can be really annoying. So I think realistically speaking, Belphimon probably does pretty fine into Levia, and then Numemon's probably going to give you a run for your money. But decks like Belphimon, you really have to look at it and ask yourself, how does it do into the rest of the meta? And how does Belphi do in terms of itself? Belphimon lost one of its biggest consistency engines, as well as losing the Eismon engine previously. Yes, you could rely on the EX2 Doberman, and I think that's fine and everything, but admittedly, the EX2 Doberman is still a much weaker consistency engine than, say, the Garu engine was, or, say, Eismon was, right?
Yeah, did they even get anything in the new set, Bakemon?
Yeah, they got Bakemon, I guess. They got the new Demimeramon. That's pretty good, right? You discard the Rage mode and then draw 2. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah. It's okay. It just lost a lot due to like it's funny. Like I feel like this deck is one of the biggest victim in Digimon, right? It keep getting hit because of other decks. It's never like its fault that it got hit. I mean, every time it got hit, it's because of another deck.
To be fair, the playstyle itself is low-key kind of inherently toxic, but like I think that's a whole other discussion for a different day.
Yeah, I don't know. This deck just like constantly catching stray. That's all I'm saying.
So I guess the question now is Belphimon a competitive deck, a high competitive deck, or a locals warrior deck? Which, as you can see, I have defined, because we had an issue where we had tier 1, 2, and 3, and we were like, tier 2 is a little like there's too many decks in tier 2. Let's chop it up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Cope. I think there's a very distinct difference between tier 2 and tier 3. Like you can definitely take some decks and top event with it, but for me, tier 2 is like consistently seeing top 8 or top 16.
Yeah. So the question is Belphi a tier 3 deck or a tier 4 deck, in your opinion?
You can make an argument it's tier 3, but realistically, it's probably tier 4.
Right.
It lost too many tools, and I think it's too slow. Even in this lower power meta, it get abused by a lot of stuff.
Yeah, because like you're playing Belphi, and sometimes Levia just hits the Serb X combo and just beats you. And with the Serb X combo, they'd be able to swing through even the attack negate off of Belphi. And you would get the blocker up, but then when you summon something off the blocker, then they'll just float into the Levia off the Biting Crush. And then you realistically, how many Karatas do you have to get rid of their Levias, right?
Yeah.
So that's just something you have to take into consideration. Next, we do have Shine Greymon. Shine's so weird, right? Like on paper, Shine does pretty well, right? Like into most things, I feel like, but
it's so weird because it was in tier 1, right? And then it barely got hit. It got like a little smack.
Yeah, like the Geo Greymon wasn't like your high roll got hit, but your consistency for the most part still there, right?
I think that's the issue, right? You say consistency, but this deck is inherently not consistent.
The deck is inherently, it's a brick fest, right? You're playing 8 Tamers, and if you don't see one of the Tamers, or you're missing some other piece, because you're trading consistency to run these Tamers.
Well, I think you need to see more than one Tamer. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Like, the issue is that sometimes the deck does not perform until you see both Tamer. And, I don't know, it's just too much of an ass in this meta. Especially now that you have deck like Levia that punish you for playing Tamer. And then, like, I don't know. It just felt very weird. I think if you're gonna play this kind of high roll style, um, Gao is probably just a better choice, right?
So there's also the argument that you can just play Ruin Mode Turbo style of Shine, where using BT2 Shine Greymon to cheat into the Ruin Mode. I imagine that variant of deck would probably do fairly well into Numemon for the most part, but I can't imagine your Levia matchup being very good either way. Yes, you play around the Biting Crush in all facets of your deck, but at the same time, they have Tamer Pop, and losing your Marcus is insanely detrimental for the deck.
And I think this meta, there's enough like slam high cost stuff that punish that kind of playstyle anyway.
So like, let's think about this, right? So like, okay, Leviamon pops Tamers. Okay, you have decks like Melga that stuns Tamers. You can't even get value there.
Yeah, that's just a lot of Tamer interaction. Like Melga legit just shut you down.
Yeah. You have decks like Bloomlord. And
Melga stun Tamer.
Yeah. Wait, does it? Does it really?
Yes. It's 2 Digimon or Tamer.
Yeah, that'd be pretty rough, huh? Yeah, that's pretty rough. But yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't know that it's stun Tamer.
Well, I feel like we're in a format where Tamers don't actually see very much play. Because Levia doesn't play Tamers, and more often than not, like, does stunning the Numemon Tamers do anything? Not really, right?
No, the stunning the Mindlink Tamer doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and stunning Louis, like, you deny them 1 memory at best, right? Yeah. And, like, more often than not, you're probably stunning their board. So, like, realistically, what Tamers are you actually stunning that gets you any value? Like, Luga just Mind Links, right? War Greymon doesn't see enough play. Like, I don't know. What are you stunning out to get value, right? So
well, I'm just saying. I just didn't realize you didn't know that.
It's never come up. It's genuinely never come up. But I digress. Regardless, I think there's enough Tamer interaction in the format that kind of deters Shine Greymon, especially when Leviamon is such a powerful deck. There's an argument that Ruin Mode Lockdown or Burst Mode like Turbo sometimes like might be able to cheat a win out, but.
Yeah, I'm willing to I'm willing to allow it to be in tier 3. I think if you
I think there's some variant of Shine that may see like some degree of success.
Like Ruin Mode Turbo probably good enough to ruin a bunch of decks days. That is probably tier 3 viable.
Yeah.
But I don't know if like the standard play a bunch of burst mode, try the OTK Shine build is that good anymore. Could be wrong, but like it just felt just setting up a bunch of Tamer in this meta feels so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Into Levia, you just give him so much value off that.
I think realistically, Shine. If you put Shine in tier 4, it's just It's just much better than like all these other tier 4 decks. Like let's be honest with ourselves. Yeah. So tier 3 is probably fine. And then we do have Mirage. You know, it's other Digimon Data Squad veteran buddy. Mirage got a secret buff. Not a lot, and because like you're like, oh dude, it lost Bukamon. The deck's not playable. It got a card that kind of like helps. Obviously it doesn't replace Bukamon because Bukamon's broken, but it helps. And that is the BT15 Betamon. BT15 Betamon Inherit is jamming, just off the rip. So Mirage Galgamon does have some kind of jamming source to play around with. Yes, you lose out on the memory Inherit, but getting your jamming is pretty good. And of course you can sometimes just high roll into the Bukamon egg.
Just a note: the new Seadra also give jamming if you want more jamming sources.
Yeah, new Seadramon also does give jamming. This deck gets a lot better in BT16 once you get the new Galgamon, but for the time being, I think both Seadra and Betamon are probably like they're probably good enough. I would say this deck is
tier 3.
It's tier 3, right? Like you don't have access to like the most consistent jamming in the whole wide world, but it's there. And as long as you have the jamming, you can probably replicate Mirage Galgamon's game plan pretty well for the most part. Things you probably have to worry about are Leviamon does have the Tamer Pop, so they can just pop your Thomas and your game plan.
It's not just that, they play a bunch of bombs.
They do also play a bunch of bombs. Numemon is probably a really great matchup because Mirage Galgamon just bounces the Monzai and denies the bounce. So that's going for you. That's pretty good. Actually, is there a world where this is tier 2? Like honestly speaking, like
I think your Levia matchup is really bad.
Your Levia matchup, well, okay. There's also the merit. There's also the thing that you could argue that if you go into Mirage Galgamon early enough, and Levia has to go up the chain, and anytime they add a card to their hand, they pass over the turn possibly. Because things have obviously changed since EX5, but in EX5, Mirage Galgamon was a very good matchup into Levia. Like, yes.
Here's the issue. So here's the thing. I don't think you're faster than Levia, and Levia would just play boost the same time that you set up, do all your setup, and then they just move out and pop you. Like it's really that simple. And then they're threatening a lot of damage.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like I just have like this weird inkling that like Mirage Galgamon has been seeing success for.
Look, I think is like that's why it's in tier 3, right? I think it's good enough to randomly see a result. I just don't know if like you're gonna see like I just don't see this deck getting a top 16 or top 8 in every single event.
No, neither do I. But I don't know, dude. There's gonna be some equivalent of like V Passion or Kiki for like Mirage Galgamon, and they'll do it. They'll pull the heist off.
And that's fine. But that's again that I don't think that changes his placement.
Yeah. Tier 3 is probably realistic. Come BT16, however, that's its own discussion. But I think at 16, it might actually be tier 1 again.
Well, because I think in 16 it's a whole turn faster.
Yeah, new Galgamon is kind of broken.
It's kind of insane.
Surprise! Very good card. Up next we do have Hunters. Hunters, there's like one person that plays Hunters nowadays, and it's V Passion. And V Passion's a very, very good Hunters player. Don't get me wrong, very, very good. He makes Hunters look like a tier 1 deck. But for like the average person, probably not going to see Hunters in top 16 very often. Leviamon now is Tamer Pop, so they can just pop all your value, and Numemon's probably on Shikurimon to deny you your Digicross shenanigans, and that probably hurts quite a bit as well. So I guess the question here is Hunter's mechanic unique enough in terms of like tucking stuff away, being able to swing at end of turn? Is it good enough to warrant tier 3?
It hasn't been seeing any result until it see actual result. I don't feel it's hard for me to put it in tier 3.
Yeah, like my issue with Hunters is that only one person has been able to get it to see success, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, if it certainly pop up again, we can make the change, but
yeah,
like, it doesn't offer anything unique, in my opinion.
No, yeah. I would agree with that. And then we do have Gallantmon, which you can have this one.
I mean, let's just start off. I think it's tier 3, right? Like, is one in EU regional. You can argue that it got some really good matchup into the EU regional, but the good matchup it has is half of tier 1. Like, this deck has excellent matchup into Nume. I think you can. I think Crimson Blaze is a really powerful card in this meta, and this deck abuses Crimson Blaze really well. I think BT13 Gallant is pretty good into Levia because you pop both of their level 6. They threaten a lot of damage, but you can always play a variant that play more security bomb to punish them for swinging at you. I don't know. Overall, it has like a pretty solid matchup into a lot of the meta. It feel like the deck has been mid for so long, but this is like a meta that's slow enough and has like enough deck spread in the top tier that like just try to play bodies for you to pop that is viable enough to be competitive.
So the question here is, why is it not tier 2?
Because it's Gallant. Like the cards, like the deck play style is good into the meta, but don't get me wrong, half of the cards you play are still not good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deck that doesn't have any. It has no protection, right?
Yeah.
I know Magidramon floats. Does anything else float?
Magidramon barely float too. It float into a Tamer and a Rookie.
Yeah.
Like every single deck have a way to double clear that. Like it's whatever.
So Gallantmon, it still has all of its weaknesses. It just happens to be really good into the tier 1, right?
Yeah. You have access to Warp Play too, which is like good recovery. So like, if Levia ever try to pop you, you have like Warp Play that you can do to, or even Heart Slam the BT13 Gallant to clear them back. So you're just like well positioned into tier 1, basically. That's the reason why it's like quote unquote tier 3. And like into Nume, like Nume is the deck that you dream to play against. It's like, oh, I pop you, I gain a bunch of memory. Oh, you play more bodies for me to pop, and they're all low DP. Like that's the dream.
Yeah,
but realistically, funny enough, I think it'll struggle more into the other tier 2 and tier 3 decks.
So yes, it did win the EU regionals as well, which I know a lot of people are going to be like, it won a regional, right? It has to be much higher, right? But like, I don't know if people have seen the decks that it played into, but EU regionals was 6 rounds, right? 6 rounds event, and it was a bye. They played into Blue Flare, Luga, and then 3 Numemons. So
I need to see how that Luga game went because that matchup seems really hard.
I have no clue, but it didn't play into any Leviamon. I would say unless the deck replicates success, so start seeing consistent top 16 outside of this EU event, it's hard for me to like justify Gallon at higher tiers.
But see, the reason I put it in tier 3 is that it realistically it will randomly top because it has good matchup into Nume, and Nume is really popular.
And so as long as you see Nume all day, you're golden, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, you just need a scrap and win a couple of your games, and then, like, just try to match up into, like, 3-4 Nume every event, and you're set.
Yeah, it's true. All right, Royal Knights. I think Royal Knights is a fake deck. I think half the time this is a fake deck. Royal Knights probably loses to the virtue of Numemon being on Chikurimon, because they go Chikurimon, and if you don't have Marcus or you don't have Porcupa, you lose the game on the spot. You scoop it, you go home.
I think you don't even have to go that far. I think Nume chipping you for 3 damage, like, turn 2, it's just gonna beat you before you get to do anything.
Yeah, that's probably not great for the deck either, huh? All right. Well,
yeah, and then you lose to Levia because Levia constantly pop all your stuff, and you
Yeah.
can never get to your win con.
And if you ever activate Purge of the Royal Knights, then Biting Crush goes off.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's
Like you never get to keep a single body on board.
yeah, it's
Like you will never get to the Omni.
that's pretty tragic, huh?
Yeah.
All right, Black War Greymon. What is there to say? Black War Greymon, as a deck, you do have defensive utility versus Numemon. You have double block versus them, which is kind of nifty. They do have D-Digivolve, however, which has always been the catalyst to Black War Greymon. You do have DP protection in the form of the Metal Greymon X, so that can help deny some of the Monzemon plays, but realistically speaking, you aren't killing them fast enough. You also run into these consistency issues, and when you're trying to dig for your pieces, there's a chance Numemon just runs you into the ground. And then decks like Leviamon is see Alteris plus Gray X or actually lose the game on the spot.
Yeah, like Levia get around most of your protection. You need your very perfect stack to deal with it. Nume other issues like you can get the Digivolve by Nume, which is not great.
Yeah.
It's like Black War Grey is already fairly slow deck, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel that good into this meta.
Yeah, I would agree. Next we do have Bloom Lord. Bloom Lord's like this weird deck. I feel like it always has potential and it just never lives up to it. Cause like, okay, you have Pomumon to deny a lot of Leviamon plays. Like they can't resolve Biting Crush if you play Pomu. So like they go Drago and you revive Pomu and they go, oh, I can't summon anything off Drago. I can't Biting. Like, okay, that sucks. You have Hydra, you have Quant, you have Quartz, which are all 3 of those are really excellent tools into Numemon. You have cards like Cherrymon as well that can help deny a lot of Lugamon's plays. And not to mention, you have Pomu into Luga as well, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like Bloom should do pretty well, like, right?
Well, Bloom issue is always the fact that it's Bloom, right? Like it you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Bloom issue is that you constantly need to see pieces to play the game, and sometime in a tournament run, that's just too much to ask. Because
okay, hold up. Bloom arguably has more consistency tools than any other deck in this format.
I agree. Don't get me wrong. I completely agree. I understand that. But here's the issue that every time I see Bloom play is that at a crucial threshold, Bloom is missing one specific card to do a play to get it out of the bad position, and it's always missing that card.
Personally, I think Bloom's bigger issue is it's a deck without protection.
Right.
I said a Quantmon, right? But that's it's Quantmon. I'm not going to be like Bloom has protection because it has a level 6 specifically that does it. But it's a combo deck, so it requires more pieces going for it. But it's a combo deck that doesn't kill your opponent.
It doesn't win the game, and it opens itself up to getting punished. It has a lot of tools, and I think it's good. Like I said, getting access to Quant make the deck a lot better. But I don't know, like just overall, is also pretty complex to play. Like the sequencing, I've seen people mess it up all the time. I don't know. It's just like it's a solid deck, but the requirement for you to do well with it is like you could just be playing.
I just
another deck.
I just think the amount of effort you have to put into replicating the same level of power these other decks do is way too much work for how little work the others have to do, right? Like just play cut dry and simple. I really think that's it. I have more faith in Mirage Galgamon, to be frank with you, to do better than Bloom.
And then you also randomly get grief by people playing stuff like Crimson to deal with Nume.
Yeah, Crimson will also destroy you.
It's the same issue with the last format against Anubis. People tech Crimson to deal with Anubis. People are gonna probably tech Crimson to try and deal with Nume, and Bloom is gonna be on the receiving end of that. And it's just like a flood the board deck that opened itself up to just losing.
Yeah, it's not gonna be great.
Yeah.
All right, we do have Dark Knightmon, and I know Dark Knightmon legit. I saw one piece of success, top 16 EU nationals, and that was in BT14. But I think there's this weird, super weird merit for Dark Knightmon. Your Nume matchup is probably not that great because they have Chikurimon. Well, like granted, you do have ways to pop Chikurimon via Skull Knightmon Axe mode, and that's pretty good. But other than Skull Knightmon Axe mode, your ways to pop level 3s aren't super stellar. So your Nume matchup is probably like eh. But the Levia matchup, on the other hand, they pop Dark Knight X, and the Dark Knight X floats into Dark Knight, and then you Digivolve them, and then if they don't have another removal, then you're in a pretty good position. And if they pop that, then you just float back into your other components, and you're chilling. That being said, it triggers Biting Crush, and then everything goes to shit immediately. So Dark Knightmon gets tossed into the gulag very quickly. But hey, it got top 16 at EU, and it's a pretty good rush deck, for the most part. It just... Nume exists, so why would you play Dark Knightmon? Personally, so that little rant aside, Red Hybrid,
Tier 2.
Yeah, it's tier 2. This is probably the third best deck in the format, right?
Do we need to keep talking about Red Hybrid? Red Hybrid has been the same deck and has existed for several formats now.
Yeah,
like everyone know what it does. It go face. Sometimes it wins. It's good. Like it's good enough.
Like sometimes Red Hybrid gets walled out. And sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't get walled out, you're doing really well. Draw your memory tamer turn 1, draw all your pieces, and you probably do well. I just realized, Lamau, I forgot to put Machine on this list. Talking about Red Hybrid jogged that thought in my head, which I think is really funny. So where did I put it? I had it. There it is. All right, cool. Machine's in the list.
All right, you want to start with Machine now? You can talk about Machine.
Oh, hold on. Let's finish Red Hybrid. Okay. Red Hybrid, it's very simple. And we've talked it to death hundreds and hundreds of times. But into the best decks, Crimson Blaze, very good into Nume. And you're probably like one of the best Crimson Blaze abusers, tied with like, I guess, Gallantmon now. But that's really great for you. Levia, yes, they do have the ways to pop Tamers. And that can be super annoying. But in the same virtue, A, Crimson Blaze, pretty good into them, let's be honest. But B, the Tamer pop goes first. So if you just don't play any additional Tamers outside of your first deck you evolve over, they resolve Tamer pop and then pop the Digimon. And so that's actually really great for you because that means your Tamer is going to be safe from Levia X. That being said, if they go Levia into Levia X, then things can get a little iffy. But if you have a stack that's spitting out double Tamer, then like that's fine because Levia is only gonna pop one Tamer. So if you have like 2 memory Takuyas off the effect, then you're fine. We actually saw Tessero versus Red Hybrid, Levia versus Red Hybrid in the North American regionals finals, and Red Hybrid they opened double Uko like both games. Crimson Blaze went crazy. He denied a lot of the value off of Levia X. Like it was good. It was really great gameplay.
I feel like you spent the last several minutes to literally says just draw well.
Just draw Crimson Blaze. On God.
No, like literally just open double Uko. Like just draw well. Like and that's all you said.
I feel like I said more than that. I think in general the deck does like relatively well into this.
Changed. It's fine. The deck hasn't changed.
But the meta around it has changed for the most part. Granted, we literally just came off of another purple format, so like that aspect doesn't change. But like Anubis is dead.
It's
So.
red deck win.
Look,
It's the classic
hey,
red deck win.
hey.
It exists in every TCG under the sun.
Come
Let's
on,
move
man. All right, whatever. Anyway, Luga. Luga is also a pretty good deck. It's seeing quite a bit of success as well. Not as much as like Leviathan or Inume, but like a fair amount of success. It got the new tools in the form of new Luga as well as new Lugar, which are both pretty great consistency boosters, as well as giving it the ability to pop floodgates now much easier. Now you don't have to rely on Chimera or Hell Luga as much. And
I think actually the most important card I got is Tyrannomon.
Tyrannomon is also kind of insane. It's a really great consistency boost. Not to mention that 3 of these cards are all half red, so now you can tech Crimson Blaze plus ADP in Luga as well. And ADP is actually pretty great because now you can OTK without fear of like hitting a degradation.
You can ADP into Secon now and just smack the crap out of
Yeah, exactly, right? The issues with Luga, I think most people run into is that still, if you don't draw AG, it feels boneless. You still have to draw into your combo pieces. Sometimes you play into decks that will just deny you the float in general. Also, Leviathan's really hard because if you don't have Uber, you can't play into Biting Crush. It's like literally impossible.
And sometimes even when you have Uber, they have 2 Levi.
Yeah, if they have 2 Levias and you don't have 2 Ubers, it's a go next. But for the most part, this is a very good deck.
It's very solid.
It's very, very good.
Just get kept by only having 4 AG. BT17.
Yeah, BT17, you get 8 AGs, one of which is a Memory Tamer. That you cheat out for free, which is insanely broken. But I digress.
Right?
I digress. Yeah, okay, birds. This deck, it's until we get the Garudamon X and the Phoenixmon X, it is very much so a rush style of deck where you're just playing Rookie Rush, but at the same time you're playing Rookie Rush, you're just playing worse Red Hybrid, I feel like, and you're playing worse Numemon. Like, yes, you have the ability to float, and that's really cool, and you can use like Sora to cheat out like your higher end birds, and that's cool and everything.
Well, the issue is that without Phoenix X, your removal really sucks.
It's Saber Dramon with
like your removal without Garuda X and Phoenix X is actually really bad. So it's just like it's okay.
Now
it's just not better than the other aggro deck in the meta.
Now, like, mind you, it does have the ability to Crimson Blaze abuse, which is pretty good for it. And when it gets deleted, it does float. And so into Nume, if they like clear your bird, you can spit out another bird, which is pretty great for the most part.
Here's the thing. You say it can Crimson Blaze abuse, but I argue that's pretty hard. Because your space is super tight. So realistically, you're not actually able to fit that many Crimson.
Look.
You have to fit all your crap. You have to fit in like a bunch of Tamers. Because you need
you need your Akiho, you need Christie's, you need Soras.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need your memory booster training or whatever, whichever one that you run. So, I think it's hard to say that this deck can fit a bunch of Crimson.
Look, I didn't say it was the best Crimson Blaze abuser. It just happens to be a red deck. Therefore, make it work. Fit it in. Like I don't know how you fit it in, but fit it in. If you can't fit it in, then is it really a red deck? Is it?
Okay, moving on.
Yeah, like, congratulations, Bird. You're probably worse than Royal Knights. Anyway, Bugs. What is your win con?
Yeah, your win con is going to BT16.
Your win con 15 is legit. Go into Herc and do nothing.
Yeah, you swing for 1 check.
You get a burn. You get to burn 1 every once in a while. And that's really about it. I mean, just like, I don't know, dude. Like, I just wish they gave this like a better win con in 15. It doesn't exist. And you can't cheat out Shivamon either yet. So you also just lose to cards like Heaven's Judgment, which, by the way, should be banned. That card is broken. I hate Heaven's Judgment. Absolutely. Broken card. But yeah, until we get Tyrant, the deck doesn't feel super great. Following up on that, we do have D Brigade. D Brigade did receive an entire new line from the Ryudamon support, and that's pretty good. You can argue that D Brigade is actually a good deck, but the question then becomes: is the payout worth it? And you've played more D Brigade than I have. If you want to like comment on this.
Okay, so the issue with this deck is that your ratio is like fairly complex. In terms of which line you want. they do work together. But you can either go more deep brigade direction or you go more deep police direction, right? Um, the sequencing for the deck is actually pretty complicated. And on top of that, while you do have protection, your protection is kind of middling, and you lose to like you open yourself up with a bunch of bodies into Lavia, and you're like not great if you get war wipe. Your recovery is actually pretty poor. So yeah, your win con is like you set up a bunch of bodies and try to win the game that way. I just don't think that's a reliable way to win the game right now. Like it just doesn't. It doesn't threaten lethal fast enough. I guess you can try to play the D Brigade build and then like flip the board and then you have like play the Dark Jet from hand, you know, for rush and stuff like that. But then you're just playing like poor man rookie rush.
And it's also a deck that casually loses to Crimson Blaze as well, which I expect to see a lot of in this format. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I feel like it's just like why would you play D Brigade when Nume exists?
Yeah, like it gets a really good card next set.
I get several
with the new
good cards next set actually.
Yeah, but the big one is the new Tincture.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it didn't perform really that well in Japan, but it maybe there's something
Well,
there.
it performed like every once in a while because you know it has access to like Vikemon and stuff like that, which is pretty good.
Yeah, it get more to it next set.
I just think the issue is the fact that like you do the same work as other decks, and it's just like the amount of effort you have to put in to replicate that is just a lot.
Yeah.
Up next, we do have the Dark Masters Omni deck. This is a deck that people came up with after Apocalypse got hit because they were like, okay, well, how do we keep getting value out of our Dark Masters? And they decided to use it as a Mega Zoo engine to turbo into Omnimons, which is pretty good if you ask me.
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, this deck you do pretty well into Leviamon because if you ever have defeat on board and they pop the defeat, then they pop their own stack. So they just shoot themselves in the foot.
It's not just a defeat, right? You play Merciful too.
Yeah, you play Merciful, so you just shoot their entire trash.
Yeah. So you actually have pretty decent matchup into Lavia. I think your matchup into Nume is kind of unfavored because you're just inherently kind of weak to like really fast aggro deck. But you do have like decent amount of tools to deal with them, like the Metal Seadra, remove them without floating, the Puppet bot deck, you know, and then you have access. Like once you get on board, I think you're pretty good. The only thing that this deck kind of suffers from is that your plays it's kind of scary to play, right? Because a lot of your plays is expensive. Sometimes your turn one is slamming a level 5 or 6 and giving your opponent 6 memory to build all the way up to level 6, and then they're ready to go, right? So that's the but overall I think the deck is good. It doesn't really have result, but it's still like a very new creation. I think realistically, if I have to bet, I say this deck is probably tier 2 by the end of the meta. But right now I would put it in tier 3.
Yeah.
But like high tier 3. It's probably one of the best tier 3 decks.
Yeah, I do think the deck itself has a lot of merit. The build for it, I mean, there is no definitive build, right? This is something that's like you said, it's relatively new.
Yeah, it's in many ways it's a lot like Nume, to where you have a core section of card. You play about 10 to 12 Dark Master. You play a decent amount of the level 5s, right? And then you play your Omni, so probably around like 35, 36 card in your deck is pretty determined. And then the rest is up to you on what flex you want to play.
Yeah. Alright, next we do have Wargreymon. Wargreymon did get top 4 in this most recent North American Nationals. It was a more aggressive-oriented style of Wargreymon. If I remember correctly, it did play 4 of the four Sec Attack plus 1 Greymons from starter deck, Tai. I mean, I get it. Like, it's a faster variant of Greymon. I'm very surprised he managed to get so far with only 1 Alterist. I feel like not seeing the Alterist is a death sentence into Levia, but, like, I digress. It worked for him, which congratulations again. But, I think it's better than Black Warg, for sure.
Yeah.
I just don't have faith that most people can replicate that success, to be frank. Like, Levia...
I think if you're gonna play this playstyle of deck, why aren't you just playing Shine OTK?
Like, why don't you play Shine? Why don't you play Mirage? Why don't you play Luga, actually?
Yeah, it's literally just worse Luga.
I mean, like, granted, like loot, like biting crush interactions and all that other jazz, which fair enough, I guess. But I feel like if you're wanting to play an aggro deck or like a big bungus aggro deck, there are better ways to go about it than War Greymon. Like I would just bank on Mirage, frankly.
Okay.
Moving on, we do have Metal Garurumon. This is a deck, if you all know, I have crazy amount of PTSD from this deck, but looking at it from like an objective standpoint, this deck has not seen any success whatsoever, despite getting what I think is pretty crazy support. Like, I think the Gabu, the Garu, the Weregaru, the Metal Garurumon...
Well, it's not any of that. The real reason this deck is struggling
Lavaya.
is that... Huh? No, the game shifted in
Oh.
playstyle. Aces. This deck is very weak into aces. As we get more level 6 aces, this type of deck that rely on single stack and try to OTK to that single stack is just gonna usually become weaker. Like, you have deck like Luga, right? And Luga is really good, but Luga is also like, you play a board while you're trying to OTK. So even if your opponent's ace and get rid of your Luga, oftentimes you can still follow up like with a play, right? Like, how many times have you seen somebody ace a Luga and then like you just follow up by doing like a hell evo, right?
Or like a
and then
Chimera, and then you keep going. Or like...
yeah,
there's a lot.
Melgat doesn't have that luxury. If you lose your stack, you lose your stack. Your only protection is on level 6, which is an issue because as you know, the best card in this deck are the level 5s. The level 5 are your bread and butter, and the playstyle has always been you get to level 5, you start swinging and OTKing on level 5. That's just a lot weaker now. Into a deck like Devas, you swing on your level 5, you get ace. You have to go into your level 6 first, otherwise you just get ace. Into like Mega Gargoyle is a very good card to counter you because like you swing the ace, you get stunned, and you can't even evo up or do anything to counter that play. You have to like remove with an option from hand if you have access to it. It's just that's just the way it is. The game has progressed to a point where this type of deck is no longer as effective as it was before. So realistically, this is probably like even with the good support it got, it's probably like low tier 3.
That being said, Secret Rare Melga is a broken card, and I refuse to hear about anything else. The fact that it stuns 3 for existing is really gross. But yeah, the deck has not performed in any capacity whatsoever. I think
move Gallon from top tier 3, please. It's gonna trigger people.
Sure. Here you go. This is what you want?
Sure.
All right. I mean, like, I think eventually Melga will see success. At some point in 15, I can't tell you when. But somebody will see success with it, and it'll like start a chain reaction because like Melga players just snort that stuff up. But I digress. Okay, next we do have Oryukin, or Alphamon. Alphamon, Protoform is a pretty big buff. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? It's a 2. It's reduces everything by 1 in the deck as far as Evo costs are concerned, which is pretty good. It gives the deck a form of sustain. It lets you grab back your pieces. So if you have Doru Greymon, the 1 of, for example, you can yoink that back, which is really broken actually when you think about it. The issues I would probably say Alphamon is going to have is, I mean, decks like Mirage, for example. Not that you're going to see Mirage most likely, but Mirage is a really hard matchup because everything you do inherently pluses. Numemon has access to Digivolve, which is really annoying, as well as being able to rush. And BT13 Alphamon only prevents Digimon with the cost 10 or higher from swinging. Yes, you could Congo. That would be fine, but at the same time, you play into Numemon's deletion. You have Digivolve in the form of BT9 Alphamon, but you're probably playing BT9 Alphamon at a really low count anyway, so it's eh. Into Leviamon, your protection is in the form of BT13 Alphamon, which is no, that's a lie actually, because Leviamon high pop, forces protection, and then low pop. Okay, so you're not even protected against Leviamon.
I was gonna say, like,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. You're not good anymore. Okay, Terriermon, aka Mega Gargomon, aka Bunnies. Okay, this is the deck everyone has been super excited for. Everyone's super duper excited to see this deck. It's tier 4. Just cut dry and simple. It's tier 4.
I mean, it didn't get enough cards. You're running like a bunch of old cards. The new card in the deck, while good, isn't good enough. I think you can realistically make a build of this deck that's probably tier 3. The issue is that you're gonna have to dodge Leviah. Leviah is probably one of your hardest matchup.
Well, so like,
Uh,
my biggest gripe with this deck is that it lives and it dies by starter deck Rapidmon, like the,
Well, I
the
mean-
level 5, right?
yeah, sure, but you can also make the same argument with Lugia, right? Lugia needs to see AG.
Well, okay, so I think you can make plays in Luga without AG. Like I know like we say like if you don't draw AG it's boneless and everything like that. But I've seen enough Lugamon at a high level from like Rusty, people like Tessero, like they
Right,
they make it
that-
work.
And that's what I'm saying. I think this deck, properly built, is probably like, at least it's probably tier 3.
See, I don't agree with that. Personally, I don't actually agree with that. I think if you don't see Rapidmon, I actually think this deck is like it's bad. It's not good. I think with Rapidmon, you're like chilling. You can make an argument. You're like, yeah, tier 3, let's go, dude. And if you don't see Rapidmon, you're like, damn, my legs are broken. Everything hurts. The universe is out to get me, you know?
I don't think I agree. I think the last time we tested, we played into Leviah, and Leviah is probably his hardest matchup in the game.
Well, last time we tested, you lost into Leviah and you lost into Deva. And I don't know. I'm not gonna get super into it. Like we can agree to disagree on this one. I'm willing to meet you in the middle on tier 3 if you really want, because like I think with Rapidmon, if you see the Rapidmon, it's tier 3 probably. Like it goes up a tier if you see Rapidmon.
I just think Mega Gargoyle is a very powerful card.
I do too, but I think there are better decks that abuse Mega Gargomon than
Possibly.
the deck itself. Like I think you're better off playing Mega Gargomon in Dark Masters than Mega. I think it's a better card in Dark Masters than it is in its own deck. I think it's a better card in, say, Bloom Lord even. I don't mean to put it up, but it's better in Bloom Lord than its own deck, right? Which
Okay.
I digress. It can
Okay.
be a tier 3. I'm not really insanely pressed about it, but I digress. Next we do have Heavy Leo, and Heavy Leo it has the ability to float. It has the ability to float. It has pretty good removal for the most part. I think the issue with Heavy Leo is that A, it's kind of slow. B,
It's not kind of slow. It's really slow.
it is slow, right? Everything costs so much in that deck. Also, the Indomitable is a play by effect, so it does trigger Biting Crush, which is really bad.
Well, also Indomitable is just not a very good protection.
No, it really isn't. Into anything that has a bounce, it's really rough. Into Digivolve, it can get really bad as well. If you happen to stun it, it's pretty bad. And board wide DP minus that lingers is also really problematic for it. So I mean, like realistically, it's like tier 3. I mean, not tier 4. It's tier 4. Next we do have Devas. I think Devas is very good actually. I think this is probably one of the most sleeper decks in the format. Yes, it is on the bit of the pricier side, I guess, because of needing 4 Fanglong Mons, but if you're willing to shell out for it, I think it's a very good deck. Having access to all sorts of different aces, it's hard for your opponent to know exactly which ace to play around, so that can kind of trick them up. But the playstyle itself is very unorthodox, so your opponent also likely doesn't have a lot of experience playing into it, and Fanglong Mon as a boss is very strong. Fanglong Mon's DP minus, it lingers for the turn, so Numemon, if they try to float, they just get popped immediately, so they don't resolve any on-plays. And you don't generally play a low end, so there's nothing for Leviamon to actually revive, and then Fanglong itself cannot be removed by anything in Levia except for Rivals Barrage if they decide to use it, but if they decide to use Rivals Barrage, I mean, good for them, I guess, but yeah. Just in general, I think being immune to Digimon effects is kind of insane. And forcing them to have to run options, on average, they probably won't be. So I think this is like tier 2. Personally, it's seen a little bit of success here and there, not like a crazy amount as like say like Red Hybrid or Nume or Levia, but it's seen some success here and there, more so than anything in tier 3.
It's good.
It's a good deck. Okay, Gamamon. I'll be frank, I have very little experience with Gamamon, so I'll let you take this one.
It's tier 4.
All right, good talk. Where in like high, mid, low?
Honestly, I don't know. The deck was kind of competent in Japan when they got the OM support,
Mm-hmm.
but we got it way too late. And it suffered a lot of the same problems that some of these other deck we talk about. Like, you need to see a bunch of your pieces to do all of this, right? Like, you need to have your tamer set up. You start tucking to get your value, and you do a bunch of swing. Like, you make really big bodies. Like, your level 4 can raid Bliss for like 15k. It's very cool.
Yeah.
But like, you don't really have a good way to win the game. It doesn't really win the game. And even when you get to your big car, like, what does it do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it removes some bodies and it play a level 4. Oh, whoa, cool. Like, it doesn't do enough.
Yeah.
Like, Proxima doesn't do anything.
No, not really. And following up on that, we have its fellow Ghost game, Digimon, Jellymon. And unfortunately, while Jellymon, yes, did kind of get insane support with all the new OTK stuff, it lost Bukamon, so your OTK...
Yep, Buka got hit.
Yeah, Bukamon is at 1. So unless you're willing to play a single Digi-Egg, the deck feels pretty bad. Because, like, you're swinging for, like 12, 13, and if you hit anything that pops it, you're just out of luck. And the Ace Amphimon, I don't believe it has protection, if I remember correctly, so there's nothing stopping you from just eating shit to a Biting Crush. Moving on, we do have Monstermon. Monstermon has received some pretty great buffs in this set. It got the new Angelomon Ace, it has the new Gatomon, both of which are really great tools. It got Quantummon as well, which is really strong top end for it. Am I missing anything else? Yeah, new Salamon is very, very good. Like, in general, the new Gatomon line is a great buff for Monstermon, and I mean, the deck is only going to get better from here on out, right? Having access to Chaos Degradation is such a huge win for it. I would say things you have to be aware of are obviously things like Leviamon, right? Leviamon can be a really tricky matchup because anything you summon is going to get Biting Crushed off the rip. So that's just something you do have to be aware of, right? And there are certain cards you can tech in Monstermon that will allow you to play around Leviamon, but then you're like sacrificing your consistency quite a bit. But for the most part, the deck actually does pretty well into the format itself. I think your Numemon matchup is a little bit rough depending on how good of an opener they open. But if they don't, out of the gate just blow you out, then you could usually stabilize and grind them out to where they run out of resources. Your Luga matchup, they have access to Crimson Blaze now, which is a little bit awkward, and they have access to ADP. They'd likely just swing, pop your Monstay so you lose blocker, and then try to OTK you from there, so that's kind of scary. Into Devas, I mean, you are probably one of the few decks that naturally runs removal for the Fanglong, which is pretty good for you. And Red Hybrid, did they open the nuts or not, right? That's what it kind of comes down to, I feel like. But overall, I think Monstay actually is pretty solid spot for the format overall, honestly. Like, I don't think it's like bad by any means. I just also don't think it's like super stellar. I think it's doable, right? If you're good at the deck, I think it's doable.
I mean, I still think the deck issues that it loses to itself pretty often. It really doesn't become consistent until EX6.
Yeah, which I don't disagree with. So that's fair enough. It's all three of these decks are all the same to me, bro. Draw well or die. Moving on.
Honestly, you can throw them into tier 4. I don't care. Whatever.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Let's go. I'm here to shit on decks. I'm down for it. Okay. Security Control. Security Control literally just won the World Championship, which, it's probably a pretty good deck. My issue with Security Control is there's a lot of things that kind of just don't care about it.
Yeah, unironically, it loses to both Red Hybrid and Luga now. If Luga runs like enough ADP, you just get smoked on the turn it goes OTK.
Yeah.
Fanglong is very annoying for you. Like, you're probably okay into Nume. Questionable. Because, like, a lot of times Nume just go Oko Swing, play something with Rush Swing. So, like, you're probably okay into that matchup. Like, there's techs you can play to deal with the floating and stuff like that. But it can, like, get really annoying if your security particularly isn't that great. Levia is pretty annoying for you.
I mean, like let's be honest. The match where we watched with Pete and Frozen, I Frozen should have won. Like in all honesty, if both players played at like the same amount of, I wouldn't say the same amount of skill out, but like if everything went like a standard game should have, like if Frozen didn't make the misplays that he did and didn't cause them to go to time, realistically speaking, I think Leviah should have won. I think Leviah was in a really great position to win the game. It's just he kept making a lot of plays that were just it just didn't work out in his favor. Which again, congratulations to both of them. I mean, they were up there for a reason, and neither of us were. So good on them, right? But I do think on average, Leviamon's probably fine into that matchup. Like Zero said, your red hybrid Luga is rough because they just ignore your security. And Devas, I mean, they play a 5, you remove the 5. They play a 5, you remove the 5. They have more 5s than you do removal. Not to mention your Hell Scythe doesn't remove anything. So, I mean, like, realistically speaking, it did literally just win Worlds, so it's probably, like, high tier 3, let's be honest with ourselves. But, like, I don't know. I don't have a super stellar amount of faith in it, personally, but... I mean,
you can put it
won Worlds, right?
I put it best of tier 3. Like, Sekhan is a deck that's always going to exist.
Yeah.
It will randomly get result. I'm honestly not surprised it won Worlds. Like it's just going to keep existing. It's the way what it is.
Yeah. All right. Following up on that, we do have Edamon.
Your favorite deck, Monkey.
Dude, I love Edamon. Which is funny because Edamon actually got 3rd place in a 60-man tournament in the Spanish community. Fun fact. That aside, I talk pretty closely with the person who made top 16 Oceania with Edamon at their nationals, and he doesn't believe in this deck anymore because it loses to Nume. Because Nume has D-Digivolve, and you just D-Digivolve the metal Edamon and you just go about your day. Into Devas. Devas is a very hard matchup as well because of how Fenglong works. And you're probably playing into the Biting Crush way too often to be comfortable with it. Lugamon is also a very hard matchup because sometimes they're just way too fast for you and you're just kind of an inherently slow deck. But hey, you do pretty well into Red Hybrid. But for the most part, yeah, this is realistically like a tier 4 deck. Alright, Grace Nova. I mean, until BT16 where you get the new Agumon and the new Galgamon, you're really just lacking on consistency pieces. Like the ceiling is there, right? Like some of the plays you could do is kind of insane. But until you get the new 3 and the new 4, it just feels like you're spending so much time digging for something that just doesn't exist.
Well, no, like, here's the issue with the deck. The real issue with the deck is if you see 2 level 4, the deck works out. Mm-hmm. But you need to see 2 level 4 early game.
Yeah.
And of your 8 level 4s. And if you don't see 2 of those 8 level 4s, you do nothing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of game where you evolve your first level 4, and then you don't get your second level 4, and you're like, my level 5 costs 3 now, and I'm gonna pass turn and get smoked.
Yeah.
Because you are forced, because your deck forced you to move out to do plays. Like you really can't afford to sit in the back and just evolve up. And yeah, that's really the issue. And also Leviah get through Grace Nova protection.
That it does. Okay. Metal Greymon. Not Metal Greymon. Blue Flare.
It is Metal Greymon.
I mean, it is, yeah. So Blue Flare did actually receive a buff in the form of Supreme Connection. Supreme Connection does allow you to play the Metal Greymon out for 1 cost, which is pretty nifty. Not so much an issue, but the fact that there's so many Chikuriamons running around because of Numemon, it just feels kind of bad, you know? The fact that you're constantly getting floodgated out, the fact that Leviamon has Tamer Pop now, neither bode very well for you. Let's be honest with ourselves, right? You decks like Lugamon, which are just really uninteractive and just deny you the ability to stun anything, is pretty rough. And the fact that you have to rely on stunning your opponent to get like multi attacks and whatnot is kind of monka. You can play like a much more aggressive variant with Sec +1 Metal Greymon into like Metal Greymon and try to OTK your opponent there. And you also have access to Secret Rare Metal Garurumon as well if you want to do that, or Zeke, and both of those are fine. I think the deck has some semblance of merit. It's like it's pretty solid. Not to mention the fact that like if Numemon doesn't have the Chikuri, then you do just stun them out and like you're sitting pretty. But like I don't know. I don't particularly have a lot of faith in Blue Flare, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Like this is I don't know, like I think it's high tier 4, I'll be frank, but I think not being able to easily out the Chikuris and losing to Tamer Pop is kind of rough. Next we do have
Honestly,
what's
if
up?
you want to play a deck that can stun, just play Melga.
Yeah, you should just play Melga. Next we do have Yellow Vaccine. Yellow Vaccine, pretty good support. The entire Andrew Woolmon lane plus Quantum are really great buffs to the deck. Also, the fact that you now have Revelation of Light is a really great card to play against Nuemon. It's essentially a heal, or like it's a heal if you choose not to play anything. So like for Secon, it's really strong, but which actually, yeah, for Secon, that's a really great card in Nume. But
Yeah.
for Yellow Vaccine, being able to Revelation of Light guarantees that Nuemon can't push against you, and you just heal, and you have so much stabilization. I think the issue with Yellow Vaccine is the fact that Leviamon, I mean, like, you're just chomping down if you play anything by effect, which sometimes your Gatomon spits itself out. And then
The other issue is your level 6 is like Seraphimon.
yeah, your level 6 are terrible, right? It's just it's a non-existent top end.
Yeah, you have Matama, but the issue is like Matama doesn't do enough by itself. It needs more.
Yeah,
It needs something else.
like you can go Mitama Venus, and that's probably okay. But then you have like Biting Crush or Seventh Lightning coming out and then shooting you.
Yeah, but the issue with that deck is that it's just not good. It's been consistently, people have been consistently trying to make that deck work, and it just doesn't.
Yeah,
It loses to too much random stuff.
yeah. I think it's like relatively high tier 4 because like the bottom end is like pretty good now, but like your top end is just boneless, like beyond boneless.
I honestly don't care if it's top or bottom of tier 4. To be honest with you, like tier 4 is tier 4.
Yeah, tier 4 is tier 4, which honestly, I think Bloom is probably tier 4. I don't think Bloom sees success. I'll be frank, but like
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
like Gallant should probably be like the bottom of tier 3.
Yeah.
Like that's a worst deck in tier 3. Because like the argument for Gallant being good is that you're a really good matchup into one of the best deck in the format.
Yeah, I mean, like,
And-
Bloom, I feel like with Bloom, time and time again, we're like, Bloom has a lot of great tools. Bloom looks really good. Bloom has a, great setup.
I'm just saying, Bloom has never done anything.
It literally just flops on its face time after time. And all these Bloom players are like, it's me. I'm the difference. I'm built different. And then they flop on their face. And I'm just like, how much support will it take for you to be a relevant deck? You know?
It just C plays. It just doesn't consistently get result, and it's been like that since it's been out. It's just what it is. Yeah.
All right, now armors. Armors did get a buff in the form of the new starter deck Magnamon, which came out in the Terriermon starter deck for some reason. But I mean, like, I get 0-2 movie Golden Touchdown, but like, still super wacky. I'm not gonna lie. Super hot take. Armors is really good. Like,
No, I agree.
actually very, very good. We've been talking.
I don't think it's a hot take at all. Is like for this meta, right? Is a great abuser of Okomon. Has a lot of synergy with all this aggro support that you have. It has protection into Levia. Like the merit of your stuff having armor forces Levia to do a bunch of other pop to fully clear your board. Like it's just a very solid deck. Has blockers, so it's like you're pretty competitive into like Nume.
And you also have
like-
a plethora of bounce as well as Zudo Ace.
Yeah, you also get big enough to where sometimes it's annoying for Nume to clear your board. Like you have decent matchup, like because you can set up like a big blocker to deal with Lugia, right? Like to where Lugia can still pop you, but you don't die that turn.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because like when they pop the armor purge stack, they don't get the restand, right? Because the Digimon didn't die per se.
Yeah.
So that's pretty great. Into Red Hybrid, I mean, like, what are they gonna do? Emperor pop you, and then like you go about your day. Zudo Ace is also insane into Red Hybrid because if they swing on Aldemon, they probably only have a 4+ tamer. Like I doubt they have the hindsight to evolve into an extra 4, frankly. And then you just Zudo Ace and bounce them, and they're just like, oh man, like that sucks.
Also, the new Magnamon is legit create a card.
No, the new Magnamon is broken. Yeah, it's on Digi bounce, strip and bounce, and its security effect Digivolve and evolve into this card. Like what? Why?
Yeah, like unironically, checking in security is the most frustrating thing ever.
Yeah, no, like armors are actually like insanely competitive. Don't sleep on this deck. This deck is very good. It's also probably like the biggest abuser of Heaven's Judgment.
Yeah, it's very good with Heaven's Judgment.
Yeah. So following that, we do have Beelzemon. Beelzemon actually made top 16 in the most recent regionals. It's Beelzemon X is still a wildly broken card. I don't have enough faith in the deck to replicate that success consistently enough. I think the fact that Balmon float in triggers Biting Crutch is really bad for you, frankly. In Numemon, the fact that everything floats is also probably not super great for you either. And I can't imagine Red Hybrid's that good of a matchup, to be frank with you.
The issue with the deck is that I did extensive testing with this deck right before Nats, right?
Yeah.
And in that format, it's too slow. Now you can make the argument like it's less slow in this format, and I tested to it a little bit, and you kind of just beat them with Melga.
Is that the caveat, Melga?
No, I'm just saying like it loses to Melga too.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I think it loses to Melga. It loses to Armor. I think it loses to Luga because it's way slower than Luga. I think it loses to both of tier 1 deck. It loses to Red Hybrid. Like it just doesn't have very good matchup spread into the high tier decks. That's my take on it.
Yeah.
I guess you might do okay into Fanglong because they're kind of slow.
I mean, you also run Rival's Barrage, so you can actually shoot it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, but I guess you can't ever swing on the 5. Because you get a Zulong, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like you go into like if you go into a 5 and you try to use the 5 to float into a BLs, that might be an issue. Like they can just remove your level 5 without you floating. I don't know. Like it's just like the matchup spread is not good.
Yeah. Next we do have Leopardmon. Leopardmon is literally just worse Bloomlord. It gets some really interesting stuff with the new Terriermon starter deck, but like it's literally just worse Bloomlord. And finally, Machinedramon. Machinedramon as a deck, it's weird. It's really, really weird. Machinedramon on paper, I mean, like, it got Supreme Connection, it got the new Megadramon, it got Gardro, Haguru, like, it got all these really cool cards. You know, it got some pretty solid support. So you'd imagine it'd be pretty good, right? And you sit here and you twiddle your thumbs and you really stop and think about it and you go, wait just a second. There's a lot that I randomly lose to. That's not good. Okay, well, let's think about that. Okay. So into Levia, Levia surprisingly is not your worst matchup because you have Hover SP plus Gardro. Having either one on the board at the time you get Levia chomped, it does mean you do get immunity. Not immunity per se, but like you survive the chomp. Because normally how the interaction works is that if you have a stack like a Chaos Dramon or a Machinedramon and they have protection, and your opponent goes Levia chomps once, Machine protects, and then it chomp again, and you've already used your instance protection in that sequence, so it would die to the Levia chomp. If you have a Gardro or a Hover SP, or just like some kind of small body, but ideally a Hover SP or a Gardro, to eat the small chomp, then the Machinedramon stack lives, and you're usually in a good position from there. But so Levia is not really the issue. The issue stems from decks like Numemon, who have DP-. They have D-Digivolve, which are both fairly annoying for your deck, because you get D-Digivolved into a 7k, and then Monzaimon X pops you, and you're like, huh,
yeah,
okay, that was bad.
Yeah, I think you lose to Nume, you lose to Luga, you lose to Armor.
Yes, Luga is a very bad matchup.
Deva is probably very annoying for you.
So it depends on how much you're willing to invest into EX1 Machine. If you're playing...
And that's the issue, right? You need to play EX1 Machine. I just don't like that card.
So if you're playing the Slam build of Machine, where like you're focusing on Supreme Connection spamming, then like you're probably fine into Devas. But for a build tall variant of the deck, where you're probably on lower counts of EX1 Machine, if you don't see the card, you're probably losing to Devas, right? Luga's hard because Luga spams too many bodies and there's way too big of DP. I don't actually...
Do you have a big Sekon?
No, Sekon's a hard matchup. Sekon is a very hard matchup.
Yeah, they just grind you out.
Yeah, and you don't have removal for Death X. So Death X is constantly threatening to remove a stack from you. It's very annoying. You absolutely demolish Red Hybrid, which is pretty cool. Not that it's that's anything new. You've been doing that since like EX4 and BT12, but like I digress. I don't actually know if armor is per se a hard matchup. Like maybe it is if they. I actually that's a lot. They just have Heaven's Judgment. Yeah, they just have Heaven's Judgment, and life gets really hard.
I'm saying you need the EX1 to deal with
that's probably pretty bad.
Yeah, Melga's not a great matchup for you either.
Melga stuns you. They stun both the analog as well as the machine, so you can't block at all. Mirage just bypasses you because of BT 13 Mach Galgamon. Anything with Quantumon is really hard because they immediately yeet the machine. Anything with Angemon is really hard because they yeet the machine. Anything with Quartzmon is really hard because they just stun the machine. And yeah, I mean, it's like Dark Masters, you have Alter B, and Alter B absolutely decimates the machine. It just, I want machine to be good. I really, 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 really do. And trust me, I tried. I really did try. But there's so many matchups where you just look at them in the face and you're just like, huh, this absolutely sucks. So unfortunately, my machine brothers, this deck is 3-4.
Yeah, this deck just sucks. It's literally one of the most annoying way to play the game.
Yeah, but like, it's also one of the best ways. I'm just saying, dude.
It's literally the most tedious deck to play into. I had to play like a 35-minute round 1 at Nats into this in like game 1 in like round 7 or something like that at Nats, and that totally blew my mental.
Well, I mean, look, it's tedious for you, but I'm having a great time, so who cares? Anyway,
I want that set, but I still hated it.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess that is the tier list. So overall, how are we feeling about BT15 as a whole?
I like it. I think it's a good meta. I think the ban list did its job.
Yeah.
You have you have a pretty good variety of decks. Honestly, I think Leviathan is pretty good, healthy best deck in format. To be honest, it's very stable. So it's like less feast or famine in the matchup spread, right? So if you don't, let me see how I can put this. If you play competitively, I think this is a pretty good format because there are very clear decks that you can perform on. That just doesn't have as many Doom matchups as in some previous meta, right? Like some of the previous meta, the issue you have is that there's clear best second formats, but then you play them and then you're just like, oh man, there's always like these random matchup that I just auto lose into. So I feel like as a competitive meta is pretty good in that sense, and the type of decks that you see deck spread wise is a pretty good amount. Like they kind of be pretty diverse in the stuff that they do. Yeah, I don't know. It feel pretty healthy meta.
Yeah,
pretty fun to play. Lavia is a very high skilled deck that I think is like pretty deserving of being the best deck in format.
Yeah, I would agree. I think overall the format, it feels very diverse. It's very fun. As a competitive player, it gets very annoying at times where it's like the format's super diverse and it's like, what do I really like build for? But for the most part, you're building for Leviathan and Yume, which is cool. I mean, you have cards like Digi Emperor and Crimson Blaze, which are both great into those types of decks. But
here's the thing. I think a meta is problematic when it's quote unquote diverse, but like every matchup is a rock paper scissors, right?
Yeah.
It's like deck A beat deck B, and deck B beat deck C, and deck C beat deck D, and then you cycle on to like 10 decks, and it's just like no matter what you pick, it feels wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because you take it to a tournament and it's just like, oh man, I randomly run into 2 of the other high tier deck that I'm bad into. It makes your tournament run feels bad, right? This meta feel like that's very and that's has always been like I feel like that's a significant problem with Digimon because we have so many like silver bullet cards that our matchup RNG and matchup spread has always been like that. But this meta in particular felt like that's not the case. So I think competitive wise, this is actually a pretty good meta to compete in. And that's feel like probably the case too in BT16, just based on what I've seen in testing. So yeah, I think this is a good format. I think BT16 is a very good format. Yeah, I think the game is pretty good. So also good job, Bandai. I think the ban list was very well done.
I think the ban list was a huge success. Before we wrap up this video, is there any last minute changes do you think we need to make to this? Or are we feeling good about this tier list?
No, I think splitting out tier 2 and tier 3 was important. And I think removing a bunch of the crap at the bottom of tier 3 was important.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Gallant is like finally is competitive.
It just took the two best decks in the format being good matchups.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. We really do appreciate all the support. Once again, the simulator has resumed progress. We're back on track, and look forward to that. It'll be released sometime in the spring. Spring doesn't start until what, like March 19th, technically?
Yeah.
So
tomorrow.
Surprise! Not that the Sim is coming out tomorrow, but it could. You never know. Maybe we'll shadow drop it for funsies.
Yeah.
But it's like what?
But
March 19th to like June something.
Right. Well, I guess the other announcement we should make now is that once we do drop BT15, one of our plan is to expand the beta test to more people, because we do need to test server capacity, and we do need to do more bug testing and everything to get ready for launch. So with the release of BT15 on the sim, we will probably make an announcement inside the 1.0 server to get more. We're gonna randomly select people, like using a random number generator or ChatGPT or whatever, and based on a sign-up sheet, we're gonna randomly select probably a few hundred people to have them join the beta test, essentially. So if you want to get in on that, join the 1.0 server.
Yeah. Okay. And so thank you all so much for watching, and peace out, guys.
All right, see ya.